anyone else joining in. Part 3 of our 6 weeks together and recapping on what Dr. Elen kind of brought together for you last night. She spoke of the nervous system and this understanding that every vertebrae has 2 nerves, and this quality of innervation kind of affects everything in the body. So we tend to maybe think of just the muscles that surround it, but kind of this quality of communication between the body, the spine, and the mind, and the importance of keeping everything operating at its optimal level, keeping space where there's meant to be space, so that the communication between the mind and the body and what comes from the mind through the nervous system and creates that pattern of communication in the rest of the body. From my component, we talked a lot about the glutes and the hamstrings, and I don't know if you're feeling it today, but I am. And just this understanding that we tend to think that we have tight hamstrings, which we usually do, but that we also usually have, very often we'll see that we have weak hamstrings. So, and the quality and the firing pattern in simple tasks like walking, when it comes to how the hamstrings and the glutes operate together. And we talked a lot about the low fibers, or the fold of the glute, and just kind of creating some awareness around the upper fibers of the glute as a muscle or muscle fibers that tend to kind of clench and grip, and a low firing capacity for the most part in the fold of the glute. So that was kind of where we came from, and we did a little bit more stretching. So we'll go over that in kind of a really brief synopsis today. So beginning on your back. Again, just so important that we are able to kind of zone in to this experience of being in the body. And for those of you that are maybe not familiar with often kind of being on your mat and this verbiage of being aware and being mindful, it's a task and it's creating a new pattern. So, and anyone can do it. So don't feel that we need to kind of grab all of this knowledge and all of these tools that are external from us. But it really simply is just closing the eyes and committing to listening to the body on a much more subtle and a much deeper level than maybe just the surface. So just taking a bit of time. And just letting your breath kind of be representative of this desire to be in your body. And we spoke a little bit each week so far about the respiratory diaphragm as kind of the lid of this cylinder, or this container of what we might call the core. And just noticing the inhale, the dropping of the respiratory diaphragm into the abdominal contents, or the visceral organ kind of area, and the exhale as it draws back up into its housing kind of underneath the ribs. And then we went from here, knees bent, feet planted, arms beside you. And the same as we began often in this practice, heels close enough that your fingertips can touch them, about hip distance apart, or even closer. And last night we did explore, and I didn't talk a lot about that, but about 2 inches even between the heels and the knees, just to maybe create a deeper connection to the glute fold. So rising up. Again, we're kind of building on these small components of rising up with this quality of union rather than suppleness or flexibility. We're creating this kind of containment and this lifting. And then just noticing maybe where you tend to grip, where you maybe feel the holding of this posture. And we spoke of this the first week, that if we really don't focus on the idea of lifting and just kind of letting the hips be, what we should get is the outer hips turning on eventually. So we are looking for maybe lifting just a little bit higher, maybe the shoulders, the hips, and the knees on that diagonal line. Maybe not quite there, and that's fine too. So then from here, we took fingers, 2-piece fingers, to the folds of the glutes. And I just want you to see if you can think about turning that area on. And kind of disregarding anything that tells you that this needs to be anything really large or anything that's kind of over-exaggerated, and that it's very, very subtle. And this mind-body connection. And lots of times we've been so dormant in this area that it really does require focus and concentration to get this area to turn on. So just kind of using a few times to kind of navigate your way kind of through the glutes, the glute max, and kind of what story it has to tell you. Coming down, and we did just take a little bit of a pause and move the legs side to side. Any movement that kind of feels good to get things moving for you. And then we came back to that same setup, and it was the exact same thing, lifting up, but we took instead both hands over to one glute. So I cued you, if I was working on the right side, your right piece fingers would come into the fold of the right glute, and the left hand somewhere kind of on the kind of sacral area of the glute. And just see if you can feel a sense of kind of cohesion in what goes on here. Because we need to understand that this muscle's not, it's not 2 separate muscles. It's maybe the muscle firing capacity through the different fibers is different, but we're looking for there to be more cohesion rather than complete dormancy here and kind of this quality of gripping here, which tends to pull on the low back and also has a result of externally rotating the thigh bone, so which will compress the SI joint. So rising up, and so see if you can connect to that. And again, it might not feel like huge sensation, but once you get it, you'll probably fatigue quite quickly. And I think I cued you to press your foot into the mat of the side that you're working on. Just to notice what pressing the heel down does for the back of the leg. And again, both hands should feel some type of kind of drawing in some engagement, some contraction. And we would swap out to the other side. We did stretch it out a little bit there, so we drew the thigh into the chest. So we're just kind of thinking about it, stretching out this entire area. Maybe the sole of the foot might look up. You can kind of hold at the crease of the knee, and that gets into the hamstrings a little more. You might extend the leg. It's up to you if you want to loop a strap or a belt around. that would be great. Just kind of whatever gives you the sensation of stretch that feels nourishing to you, not necessarily over and above what's available. And we went through that on the other side, and then there was the option to step the feet forwards again, so it challenges you more. Stepping the feet away, you'll feel more hamstring activation. We do, however, want it to be glutes first, hamstrings second, when it comes to that particular alignment. So from there, we extended the legs forwards. I didn't cue you guys as to what props we were using, but extended the legs forwards about hip distance apart. And the feet were active, as though you're standing on something in front of you, whether it's, you picture it to be the air or the baseboard or whatever it might be. And if it helps you to watch my feet in this, just so you kind of know, sometimes we get lost in translation what exactly it is we're meant to be looking for there. So the legs are straight. We find the kind of drawing in of the core. So there's still that natural curve through the lumbar, the front ribs hugging in, the transverse abdominis drawing in as well, keeping all of this nice and supported. And then we brought just a little micro bend, so just a teeny tiny little bend. If I didn't know you were doing it, I wouldn't probably be able to even see it. So there's going to be a natural lift anyways, where right knee crease comes away from the mat, so we're just slightly bringing that into to more exaggeration. And then we went from here, just marrying the breath and the movement, or the breath and the engagement. So press the heels in. I can feel that today. And then releasing. Pressing the heels in. And releasing. Pressing the heels in. And releasing. And so we can go doing both sides simultaneously. What might be interesting even here is just to practice going from one side to the other. Does one side have better firing capacity than the other? There's not a right or wrong answer, it's just an is, and it's an information for your own self-observation. And then we offered the option, take a pause, we offered the option to focus in on one leg and kind of an asymmetrical type movement with what the other leg was doing. So right heel is down. Create the imagery that the left heel is lifting. It might not manifest into actual lifting, or perhaps it does. So we're not changing all of this. All of this stays and lifting up. And it doesn't have to come high, or it might come high, but keep pressing the heel down. And it should feel like you're working hard. And then when we made the exit, we resisted the exit almost. So it's not a kind of flop out of the posture. Let it be mindful. Lower and down, and keep this turned on the whole time. Lowering down. So I'll let you go through the second side there whenever you would like to, and it's all of those same cues. Any kind of movements that feel good here, and movement in general, just really, really good for the body, no matter what your ailment is. And then we swapped positions from here and came up to a seat, or to a table rather. So as always, blanket if you'd like to support the knees. Come on to all fours. And just for sake of kind of suppleness in the spine, trying to find those cats and cows. And I do this at home, just kind of whenever I'm feeling maybe a little bit stuck, wherever it might be in the spine. See if you can create the bone by bone articulation, starting always at the sacrum. So starting the movement into cow, dropping that down, and then gradually climbing up the ladder of the thoracic spine into the cervical spine. And then can you do that same order on the way out and into cat? So can you begin from the sacrum, the lumbar curve, the bones of the upper back, and then the neck. And just see what that added little bit of slowing down does for your experience. And as we tip into cow stretch, we should probably be able to feel a stretch through kind of that fold of the glute. And maybe even notice, I'm not sure I cued you on this last night, but as you come into this, what happens when you isometrically press your knees away? Almost like you're trying to tear the blanket apart. So while you're in your extension, press your knees wide. Just see what happens there for you. So I would suggest doing that a few times just to keep things kind of supple and keep things moving. And then we moved into to the bird dog variations, and it actually was just not even the bird component, just the, I'm not sure which end's what, but just the lower end. So firming in, nice and strong in the spine. Check that out in the mirror. So there's a tendency to kind of lax and just be in the shape kind of. And again, just finding that integrity in the body. So extending one leg back, your kneecap, your toes, and your hip bone looking to the floor, lifting up. And we even exaggerated the internal rotation of the thigh. So we even cued to spin the big toe in. And then from there, so feeling this connection to the back line of the leg. And unless you really think about it, you probably won't feel it. So outer hip absolutely turning on both sides. Crown of the head though draws forwards. And then I cued you to watch my foot here if you're not sure. So I cued you to press the ball of your foot away. And again, notice if the tendency is to sag in the shoulders. Only hold as long as you can with alignment and with function. And then we took a pause. We went ahead and did the second side with that. I think we did an intermittent child's pose. And then we went with the second round through. So repeat that first one on the second side. And then I'll demo the second option there. So it was same setup, lift it up. So again, watch that we're not in something like this, keeping all down, big toe even slightly spun in, low abdomen draws in, press your ball of foot, and then bend the knee like 45 degrees. My hamstrings are shot from yesterday. So bending the knee 45 degrees, and I would just do a few repetitions of that. Just, again, quality over quantity is what we're looking for. We did explore downward facing dog after those, just mostly as a way, and I really suggest that you keep your knees bent here, mostly as a way to just softly try to kind of coax the backs of the legs open. So we're working a lot on the focal of strengthening through the glutes and the hamstrings. So feeling that stretch as well. And then from there, take your time, keep your knees bent to the degree that works for you, that your body needs and requires, and then rolling up. And then we came from here. I'm going to assume that you can see me. All that matters is that you can see my lower body here anyways. So the wall was basically just used as support. Stepping up. And then we just wanted to kind of really dissect or break down the walking, the idea of our gait as kind of the thing that we do every day, as long as, you know, we're the thing that we should be doing every day if we're not, to take us from place to place, to move us forwards, to propel us into life. That really is important that it's being done and the firing order is being done properly, because over time that's going to create a whole other myriad of issues if it's not. So just mimicking walking to the best that you can through that suspended leg. So it's when the hip is in extension that we'll feel hamstrings and glutes turn on. So we did it a couple times, feeling upper fibers of glute max, and then feeling glute fold of glute max, noticing where the hamstrings kind of come into all of that. And then we kind of went back, we did it both sides, and then we kind of went back and kind of tried to take up a good surface area to see if we had cultivated even the slightest sense of kind of union or working together, rather than something that's so separate or so just here and not here, really, is the big thing. Yeah, we spent a lot of time on that, and that's a nice exercise that you can do at home. You don't need a block. Use a couple books stacked on top. It's just enough that you have a little bit of space. You'll feel the stabilizing outer hip turning on as well. And I encourage you to check in on any asymmetries that you notice, or any patterns that come up, or even just when you're walking out in the day, or whatever it might be, walking around the house. Just can you notice those little things in your body? From there, we did do a little bit of a lunge series, just to kind of put that into a more integrated form of yoga, if you will, but not necessary. Those things are great for home. And then we moved into, we did do the block outer hips. I think I'm going to save that one for next week. I will mark it down to make sure that I do integrate it somewhere in next week. I want to just get to the stretching component. So we did use, you can, we makeshifted a little kind of chair using our props. So you could actually use a chair or the couch at home if that kind of worked better for you. Something that's kind of similar to this is great. And I liked the component of the blanket just because it gives us the ability to slide the foot. And then your massage balls, or whatever it might be, 2 lacrosse balls in a sock, tennis balls in a sock works absolutely fine too. So we came to a seat, put those balls kind of right in the sits bone area, the fold of the glute. And that's not where they have to stay necessarily, but it's kind of a good place to, feels really tender today. If any of you check this out on today or tomorrow, on Wednesday or Thursday after class, you'll probably be feeling it too. So some of you will be kind of just lingering with the knee bent and maybe like a little bit of side to side. And as Dr. Elon mentioned, with this type of work, we're looking, we'll feel some discomfort, we'll feel some unfamiliarity, maybe some awkwardness. There's no kind of changing the fact that it's balls pressing into your tissues. Pain is not something we're looking for, so just being able to use your own inner kind of body barometer to check in on those things. You can shift it down slightly. Again, with what we used yesterday, we didn't have as much room as you might have if you were using kind of a normal couch. And then the more you think about stretching this, so pinning and then stretching, you might fold forwards a little bit. Your blocks or something, a stool, a chair out in front is a nice support. You want there to be this kind of mindset of ease as you're doing this type of work. As you're doing any of this, as much as you can, approaching it from a place of ease. So we did both sides with that. And then we came into that pigeon variation, which I know some of you will prefer just your normal figure 4 stretch, so on your back here. But we did do it from this place too. So blocks. The lowest option, I think there was one student who didn't even need the blocks. Just on the floor was good enough to feel outer hip kind of turning on. And this leg can do whatever it's kind of just not in your way doing. So the lower that you're gonna start lower and maybe work your way higher. Some of you might have it all the way up to highest option on blocks or whatever you might have at home that kind of can makeshift as blocks. And then hinging forwards is gonna kind of deepen the sensation. So that was kind of a quick synopsis on what we went through. Feel welcome, guys, to send along any messages that, or any questions, any concerns, anything that comes up for you. You know, if I don't know the answer, I'm happy to try and find the answer for you. So, thank you all so much. Happy Wednesday today, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Namaste.